And as Michelle said, I'm the Executive Director of Power and Systems. I'm very excited about our second virtual training gathering. We're offering these to the Power and Systems community for a variety of reasons, which include, but are not limited to, really a chance to deepen our expertise, a chance to share best practices, and to really address, especially in today's case, the very pragmatic issues of using this work in the organizations that you serve, whether you are an internal practitioner or an external consultant. In fact, to use our terminology, it's really a great opportunity to do these virtual trainer gatherings to integrate and to work together to ensure that Power and Systems trainer community is a very robust system. So before we get into today's content, just wanted to share a little bit. I was asked to share a little bit about what's going on in Power and Systems and what are the other things we're doing beyond virtual trainer gatherings to really try to enhance our efforts to serve our clients and to bring this work out to the world. So as Executive Director, I'm really passionately involved in a variety of things to support and lead the growth of this organization. And we're trying to do lots of different stuff to energize the system and build on the impact and relevance of our work. So in addition to these virtual trainer gatherings, or we already have an acronym, VTGs, we are also hard at work updating trainer manuals, including the trainer manual, the supplementary manual, the logistics manual, to make those even more relevant and more up to date. We are working on the PowerPoint slides, and we'll be shortly, we're just about done with those, and coming up with a more picture-oriented version of the PowerPoint slides for the OW, and also to make sure it reflects the diversity of the clients that we serve. We are working on a new website to make it easier to navigate and find the resources and support materials you need, as well as for clients to find all of us in our work. We are actively building a trainer directory, which, like LinkedIn, you will be able to go into and add your profile if you want to. So you can find other trainers can find you. And when Power and Systems has a client that we would like to subcontract with you trainers out there, we can reach out to you based on your area of expertise and based on your geographical location or ability to travel to perhaps share business with you. So a lot of good things coming out of that. We've also done a lot of work around updating the design of the When Cultures Meet workshop for those people that are also certified or interested in that. I'm really excited, if you haven't heard this already, to let you know that we are bringing the Power Lab back from hiatus. It hasn't been offered since 2015. So this March 31st through April 5th of 2019, we'll be offering a Power Lab, which is a week-long, really deep dive in all things Oshtray. And that'll be held on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, USA. We are also planning our next face-to-face trainer gathering, which will be held in June of 2019 in the UK. More details to come on that. And of course, it wouldn't be a complete list if we didn't mention what's going on this week, which is the Worldwide Week of Partnership, where we waive our royalty fees and we encourage all of our trainers to offer pro bono workshops to nonprofits and other deserving organizations. So there's a lot going on in the system, and there's a lot of expertise that resides out there. In addition to all of Barry Oshtray and Karen Oshry's brilliant work, I would say that the trainer network and all of the wisdom, experience, and passion that resides there is probably the biggest asset that this organization has. So we're really excited about that. But now I'd like to turn our attention to the virtual trainer gathering, the reason that we're here. I'm very happy and grateful to introduce our two facilitators for today's session. We are very lucky to have with us both Kevin Purcell from the US and Mitch Mitchell from Australia. Both are members of the Leadership Integration Team at Power and Systems, which is a group of 10 people who are spread throughout the world that play a really important stewardship role for the whole Power and Systems community and the body of work that we use. They are both deeply expert practitioners and master facilitators. So I want to both impart to you, we are very lucky to have them and to publicly thank them for both generously donating or sharing their expertise and their wisdom. So let me now turn it over to Kevin and Mitch, and I wish everybody a very enriching and worthwhile session. Over to you, Kevin. Over to you, Mitch.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and thanks, Michelle. So we're delighted to have all of you with us today and this evening and this morning, wherever you are on the globe. And this is Kevin Purcell here. And first of all, I want to just make mention of the fact that there are old friends of mine on this call today. I saw from Michelle's invite that there are people that I haven't spoken to or seen in many years, but we used to work together. Hello to you, friends of old and friends of recent, people that I've worked with more recently, and then new friends that I don't know yet and haven't had a chance to work with. So welcome to all of you. Delighted you're taking your time to join us. We also Michelle was kind enough to do a sort of a pre-call survey with you that some of you were able to contribute to. Thanks for that. And Paul, Mitch and I were able to learn a little bit about why you're joining us on this call, what your interests are, what focus areas you have, what kind of background and experience with power and systems workshops you have, and that was very helpful. And just briefly to share a bit about that, we have people that are brand new, newly certified trainers that are just out and itching to get going. And then we have folks that, you know, been around for years that have done many workshops around the world in a variety of settings and venues. So a nice range of experience, and that will make, in a little while, we're going to do some what we call breakout rooms where we divide you up into smaller groups to talk with each other. And that will be a really rich experience because of the diversity of geography and background and experience that just these callers, right, people that have joined us on this virtual trainer gathering share. So look forward to that here pretty soon. I want to talk with you a little bit about some sales approaches that I have used with power and systems materials over the years. I was first exposed to Barry's work about 35 years ago, and over the next 4 or 5 years, scratched and clawed my way to finally get to the Power Lab in 1988, and the year after that become certified in a variety of OSHRI workshops, and so have had the opportunity over the last 28 years or so to do a lot of work with power and systems, both internally as a consultant and externally. And we have both those consultants on this call today. We have a few internal folks and lots of external people that have joined us. So I'm going to try to share with you a little bit of wisdom that I've managed to gain and save you from some of the mistakes that I have made and survived in selling, frankly, the work of power and systems. And so my number one point that I want to mention is I don't ever sell these workshops. How about that for a paradox? I actually don't sell the workshops in anything that I do. What I try to do, is I try to understand the organizational pain that the client is facing. And invariably, in fact, I would say probably 90% of the clients I've had over the years have some kind of middle pain that they are experiencing. And in addition to talking with them about their pain in the middle, I then will segue into sharing examples of ways I've seen other organizations sort of increase their middle effectiveness and reduce their middle pain, which of course generally involves doing something from power and systems. So many of you know this from being experienced consultants and running your own business, but my number one lesson would be don't sell the workshop, find the pain. And if you find the pain, invariably there is going to be middle pain. And once you have middle pain, then you have a whole myriad of solutions that are potential there. Secondly, along the way, oh, by the way, feel free in the chat room to write questions, comments, reactions along the way. And Michelle mentioned about the chat room device at the bottom of your screen. Just feel free to do that at any point. Secondly, I also look for symptoms of system blindness, and that is crucial in my mind. And I have a quick Barry story to share with you. This comes about in the early 90s or so in Seattle, which is where I was living at the time. And Barry did a public workshop, and some of you in your pre-survey for this call mentioned how there aren't public workshops anymore, and there haven't been recently. That's true. But this was a public workshop in Seattle, and there were about 25 people present. And there was one woman participant in the workshop who, throughout the day, she was always attacking the material, the experience, and she just seemed to be really on edge, and almost, in a sense, her resistance was mounting as the day went on. And it was visible to participants and to, I'm sure, to Barry, and I certainly noticed it. And near the end of the day, she raised her hand indignantly and said to Barry, "All right, tell me, what are the underlying values of this workshop? What are the underlying values in the organization workshop?" And Barry stopped and turned and smiled politely and said, "Number one, seeing is preferable to blindness. Number two, love is preferable to hate." And there was a dead silence in the room. And we never heard any more from the woman that day. And I checked in with her at the end, and I said, "What was that like for you?" And she said, "Well, I had never thought of it that way." And I think there was a sense of her resisting the experience and resisting the ideas, but she hadn't really connected to the values of the workshop. And so, in many ways, understanding those core values, specifically seeing is preferable to blindness, that isn't a sales point I would use with a client necessarily, but something I would encourage you to hold in you, because all of our clients have blindness. They have blindness inside their organizations, blindness outside the space that they occupy, blindness of their customers and what their challenges are. There's all kinds of blindness floating around the organization. And so, as you're assessing the challenges your client is facing and not selling the workshop and looking for middle pain, I would invite you to see the organization workshop and other OSHRI materials as an opportunity to help the client turn blindness into sight. And one quick anecdote I want to share. Colleague of mine, old friend, old power and systems consultant and advocate, guy by the name of Bob Ream. Bob, his health is failing right now, I'm sad to say, but he was, in addition to all the work he's done with power and systems over the years, Bob was the assistant director of the Power Lab film, Living in New Hope. And if that's a film that you're not familiar with, it's available to see on the Power Systems website, I believe. Jeff, you may want to clarify that. But it's truly an outstanding film and was nominated for an Educational Documentary Award. And Bob, assistant director of that film, had a great quote at one point back years ago that I have used throughout my application of the organization workshop relating to system blindness. And that is the definition of organization. It's a collection of ordinarily nice people who do terrible things to one another with good intentions. Again, the definition of organizations, a collection of ordinarily nice people who do terrible things to one another with good intentions. Hence, the paradox. Most people that work in organizations are perfectly nice. The challenge is that we don't see the impact of our results. And the impact of our behavior on one another, hence the sideshow as opposed to the center ring. And so I often will put that definition on the board when I'm talking to my clients, and usually they'll laugh, which is appropriate. But then I say, well, what does this mean for you? Does this resonate to you? And we can have a conversation about what life in organizations is like, just in general. So again, find the organizational pain. It's often in the middle. Secondly, carry for yourself, looking for symptoms of system blindness within the organization where they're not seeing the impact of their behavior on others. And then my last point that I want to emphasize, and this is going to sound sort of twisted, but it's exactly what I mean. Talk about the workshop itself as little as possible. Focus on the client, focus on the pain that they're experiencing, look for middle challenges, look for symptoms of system blindness. And if possible, while you talk about the workshop as little as you can get away with, if possible, try to get them up and doing something live in the room. Now, of course, you do sales calls just on the phone, you do them on a VTC like this, on a Zoom call, etc., and or you do them live. And so the example I'm going to give you is ideal in a live setting. We don't always have the luxury of that, but I want to share it with you anyway. On a regular basis, when I'm meeting with clients, even with clients I don't know that don't know me, or relatively cold call, I will, if there's more than one of them present, I will have them stand up in the little conference room we're in. And I'll send one in one corner, and I'll send the other in another. And I'll go and I'll whisper to one, all right, you're the top. This is your message, and I'll give them a message. And then I'll go down and whisper to the other, and I'll say, you're the middle. Your job is to communicate the message from the top to the organization. And I'll say, let's take 2 minutes, go. And then they make some stuff up, and invariably, the top experiences briefly what that potential burden is of being able to communicate that message from above. And the middle also experiences briefly what that potential tearing or pulling may feel like when thinking about communicating it outside the room. And we'll just stop. And that can be as short as a 3 or 4 minute exercise. And invariably, some of the conditions will come forward in an experience just as brief as that. And we can talk about how that plays out in a broader setting with more people, with more layers, and how some of their middle pain may come up in that. And that may suggest questions from them. So because the truth is, and we all know this, everybody on this call knows this, it's virtually impossible to talk about an experiential learning process. There is a fundamental paradox in that. The moment you begin talking about something that is fundamentally experiential, it takes the experience and puts it into an abstract. And it makes it meaningless, or at least confusing. So I strongly encourage you, and several mentioned this on your pre-call surveys. I encourage you to talk about the workshop itself, the details of it, the logistics of it, as little as possible when you're still in sales mode. If you get an agreement to do the workshop, well, that's different. Then you do need to begin talking some of it. But before you get an agreement to do this from the client, talk about it as little as possible, because all it does is confuse things. On the other hand, if you work it where they're going from, get them up and doing something together and focus on their pain, which is often middle pain, and look for symptoms of system blindness in a way that you can help them begin to see possibilities for their, not just for their system, but for all the human systems in the organization and outside the organization they deal with every day. So those are my key points, and I put those out for you. And I know Mitch is going to share some other strategies and get into some marketing strategies as well. My final thing I want to say at this point of the conversation is I am, as Jeff said, I am making an offer to all of you that are on this call. I've been doing these workshops for many, many years, and as some of you have also. But if you ever find yourself stuck and wanting some help or some support, please feel free to call on me. Michelle can share my email address with you if you're interested. And I'm happy to help you either on email, on a call. Happy to do that. And that is free of charge to anybody in the Power and Systems Trainer Network. So that is an open invitation for everyone. Mitch, take it away.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll second that offer with all the best of good intentions, but I might do terrible things to you. So certainly would echo that. Good day from down under, as we say. It's 7:30 or so here. It's a rainy day in Sydney. We do see rain occasionally, but it won't rain on our parade. So yeah, good day there, everybody. I sort of won't go over the sorts of things that Kevin has said. I've got a whole list of stuff here, but I'll be pretty quick. But what I have done is tried to respond to all the various things that people put in the survey. I think what's going to happen is some of this will be ho-hum for some. Yeah, done it before, know that, move on. For others, it might be a little nuance that you can use to sort of fine-tune your marketing and your sales. And we'll have time in the chat rooms to look at it. So here we go. Take a breath. Move, go to the top, go to the middle, whatever you need to do to get focused. So Kevin's already said it. I've never had a client say, can you do a workshop where we can go from systems blindness to systems sight? That's what we know that they need, but they never want that. Kevin said the same thing again. It's about identifying the pain. It's the engagement. Is it we're not having enough promotions going out there, innovation, our leaders aren't talking. So, but what I've also found is sometimes people don't see their own pain. And we talk about you have to sort of sometimes create the virus. You have to keep on asking questions. My God, does this happen? Yes, that does. And does this happen? Yes, that does. There's just, wow, until at the end they go, oh my God, I didn't realize we were so sick. And you go, yeah, you're pretty sick. But guess what? We have an antidote for you. And that's what you're doing. You're really selling an antidote to that pain. A couple of other things that people talked about action plans. We never have action. We never have sort of proposals. A proposal is proposing something. We suggest you title what you're doing an action plan. It's all about action. Also in that, one of the other questions you can ask up front is, what's this costing you? You say that, your net promoter scores are down because people, we're not having that customer focus that we need. Wow, what's that costing you, do you think? You say that your engagement's down. What's your recruitment level? Well, what's that costing you? What you want to get to is a point where they think that this is just the cost of this workshop, because that was one of the things that you put up in your survey, is nothing compared to the benefit that you've got to go. You've got to weigh those two things out. Jeff talks a lot about this too, is that don't necessarily come in with even the pain. Maybe you might want to ask, what strategic initiatives are they into? They've already bought into that. And then you simply attach what you're doing with OW to those particular strategic initiatives. So you're starting where the client's at rather than trying to sell something. Some of you talked about objections. Objections are great. The greatest thing you can get, not for the current workshop and the next one, is objections. Always objections agree. Someone says it's a very expensive workshop. Absolutely, it is very, very expensive. And what our clients have found is that the value they get from this is just enormous. So the other thing with objections too is they become the essence of your testimonials. one of the objections you might get is, say it's a long time to take people away, 1 day, 2 days. We will get that, and when we ask for a testimonial, and always ask for testimonials, you specifically ask that client, can you talk about the fact how you felt about time away? So they'll say, hey, I thought this was going to be pretty time wasting. I was worried 2 days or 1 day out of work. Best investment I ever made. So whatever objections that you actually have, ask your clients to actually give you a testimonial, not a bland one, but to overcome that objection. And then you sprinkle them through your action plan. Really important. But the real thing that you do with testimonials is a testimonial is not for your next client. That's only 10% of it. A testimonial is for your current client. As soon as they write a testimonial, they have tension. The tension is, I've said you're great, I need to back it up. So they'll do 1 or 2 things within a month, promise you. 1, they'll give you more work, or 2, they'll give you a referral. That is the only way they can relieve the tension of giving you a testimonial. So if you want to sell more, get more testimonials, and don't just wait till they come, ask for them. Free stuff. One of the things was, hey, we've got a lot of free stuff. How do we compete? Once again, I would agree. Yep, a lot of free stuff out there. And what we find is the people that are using our work really want results. You're not saying that the other stuff doesn't get results, but you're pushing results rather than free stuff. Next one, a lot of you talked about fees. I never talk about fees. It's an investment. Here's your investment, what your investment is worth. These are small things, but the nuances of language are so important. Give a guarantee and name that guarantee. In our coaching, for example, we say it's a no grow, no dough guarantee, but do have a guarantee. I think it helps a little bit. Now you've got to really back that up, but have a guarantee. Next is when people are hesitating, which I think one of the things is people hesitate, they don't buy. Make that tough question. Do you have enough information to make a decision now? Do you have enough information to make a decision? Now, if they don't, they'll say either yes, and you'll say, great, what's it going to be? Or they'll say no, fantastic, what more do you need to know? Another thing on discounts, people talk about discounting. I would advise you to, and this is to have a sticker price in your market, whatever that is, and stick to that. Now, it doesn't mean you don't reduce the fee, but for example, if you're working with a corporate and it's $10,000 a day, and then you want to do a not-for-profit and you want to make it $5,000, you let that not-for-profit know the fee is $10,000. We are value adding $5,000 for you. So when they talk to the next person, it's a $10,000 workshop and they gift it as $5,000. If you start to alter your sticker price, I mean, they may not happen throughout the world. Australia is a very small place. So we've got to be very, very strong and firm on our sticker price. Also, too, when you're working for not-profits, let that not-for-profit know, hey, yes, it's $5,000 or zero if it's Worldwide Week of Partnership, but it's a $10,000 value. Whether we like it or not, it's not saying, oh, look how great we are. People often put a value on something that you put a value on. If you give it away, sometimes it's not really seen as the juice that it is. Kevin made a great point. You've got to give them an experience. We can't give them an experience, but we can tap into the experiences they've had. For example, in OW, or any experiential learning, we talk about, look, you can read National Geographic and see every picture of Italy you like, but it's nothing like sipping a Chardonnay or a Pinot Grigio in an Italian winery. And that's what we do with the organisation workshop. We take you there. We immerse you in that gut visceral level so the stuff sticks. So don't back off on metaphors. Organisations don't perform, people behave. They come to you to get better organisational performance. That is a lag indicator. We talk about you want your people to behave differently, and people can't change what they're not aware of. So if you want your people to change their behaviour, they have to be more aware. You want to increase their awareness. There is nothing like the organisational workshop to increase people's awareness. A bit of marketing stuff. Probably some of you are already doing this. What we call a sideways sales letter. You might send 3 short videos or articles to do with partnering, to do with collaboration, and then you're always adding value. And then maybe on your second letter, you have a slight call to action, a CTA. And then on your second letter, you also put bonuses. So not only do they get the organisational workshop, they're going to get a coaching session for three sessions. You'll do a half-day teamwork with them. This is fantastic because you get in there and you go deeper in the organisation. So rather than what we do is we bundle it up. So it's an irresistible offer. They just can't say no to it. The offer is just so irresistible. And it's often the bonuses that get you across the line. Also, too, always put a deadline out. People get busy, and I'd always suggest this price is good too, or this bonus is good too. So that's a real dumping of stuff. And once again, probably a lot of you are doing this, and hopefully it's a bit of a review. So the next thing to talk about, and I'll go through this pretty quickly, is, and Kevin talked about that, not just much the workshop, but here's a one-day version that we find. One of the objections, or a few objections, was how do you make this come to life? It's just theory. Well, it's not theory. It's the most practical thing you can do. So here's a strategy for a one day. Agree the strategic initiative in the before, send a pre-work out and asking people what are their ideas on the strategic initiative. Select some internal trainers. We then train internal trainers, we call them champions, that have great energy, they want to learn, they're very well respected, and they're not senior leaders. Then we train them in some team methodology, and we focus a lot on the great thing you'll get from OW is we're going to leave a methodology behind. It's not launch and leave, it's really launch and leverage. During the workshop, in the morning, we will do just the half-day version of OW. Then in the afternoon, we'll go into mixed groups. We'll get those facilitators facilitating okay, if this is the strategic initiative, what are the ideas that you have? We call them PIPs, potential improvement points. We identify what they are. We categorize them, we prioritize them. Then it's done to the whole group. We collect all the ideas. Then afterwards, and this is where it comes in, you are getting them to collate. It's a fantastic example of integration with middles, because most of the champions are middles. You get them to collate the ideas, you get them to socialise them, and they're talking to often tops coming in as early as a partner, not late as a judge. You then get presentation and sign-off. Similarly, we're also working with the sponsors at the same time, talking about what their hopes and fears are about this sort of work, because sometimes it can be a bit scary. We're coaching them. Then we communicate to the whole business what the ideas have been, and then we actually help them execute. So this is an example of how, sharing a process where they clearly see, wow, we're working on real business stuff with real business outcomes, and it goes way beyond the workshop. The last thing I was asked to talk about was just some of the cultural nuances. So maybe that next slide now, Michelle. Thanks, mate. In the strategic intent, when I've done a few of these workshops in different places, they went okay, but the culture is so immersed that you have to sometimes shift them out of that culture. So, for example, in China, if you've ever been to China, it's all about bargain. That's what it's about. It's bargain, bargain, bargain. So you have to maybe in the strategic input talk about the bargaining's great, but is it giving you the outcome? In Korea, very paternalistic culture. What the most senior male said goes. So you might want to point that out and then talk about what would it be like if everyone had more say. In Australia, we're pretty rebellious because we're convict stocks. We hate anything to do with tops or middles. Okay, it's like a national sport here to knock your politicians. So we might talk about, what it would be like to cooperate a bit more. In Malaysia, they have a saying called gotong royong, which means for the good of all. Which therefore means that sometimes people aren't taking a stand. So there, we might, in our strategic input, might want to talk about how you might want to take a stand. So again, although you've got an international workshop, there are some cultural nuances that we need to take into account, and even the cultural nuance of the client situation to better serve our clients. That was a major data dump. I'm a good person, probably doing terrible things, but I hope it's helped in some way. Back to you, Michelle. What we're now going to do is as follows. We're going to go into breakout rooms. There's 3 questions that we're going to ask you. We suggest in your breakout room, go to where the energy is. If you want to answer all 3 questions, fantastic. If there's only energy around question 1 or 2 or 3, whatever, but do go to where the energy is. And hopefully what Kevin and I have done is kicked off some ideas here. Please elect a spokesperson in your group to take some notes down, and then we'll come back to the main group. We'll expand on it, we'll share more, and we'll try to go even deeper than some of the things we put forward. So thanks for listening, team. Back to you, Michelle.
Great. Thank you so much, Mitch and Kevin. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop sharing the slides for right now, and I'm going to work on breaking it into just a few breakout rooms. Kevin, Mitch, and Jeff, I'm going to have each one of you. My hope is that each one of you will be in a different room. I will go and I'll check on each room just to make sure. If I have two of you in one room, I'm going to split you up so that way you can each be in one room.
Great.
So in just a minute, I'm going to break you out into the 3 separate groups. You're going to see a pop-up window when I do that. That's going to allow you to accept joining into the breakout room. You can, at that point, unmute yourself so you can talk to your teams. I'm going to send you a message that will pop up on your screen with the questions. I'll give you a 5-minute warning. Did we decide how long we wanted for this to go? Was it about 15 minutes? So we can all come back and discuss? Okay, great. So I'll give you guys a 5-minute warning and then a 1-minute countdown. When you see that 1-minute countdown, you can click to join back immediately, or you can wait and the system will automatically bring you back to the main room, okay?
Great.
All right, my friends, here we go. What I'm gonna do, if it's okay, I was thinking maybe I could share those questions if you wanted to have a deeper conversation around that. Mitch, were you okay with that?
Yeah, I think that we had some great ideas coming forward in our group, so it's really up to you. I mean, I think it would be good to share with the whole group.
Yeah. Great. Okay, can you guys see the questions now? They're very small. They're very small. Is that any better? Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Okay, Mitch. I didn't know if you wanted to have further conversation around this or if you wanted to carry on with.
I think Eileen was kind enough to take a couple of notes down. Maybe, Eileen, if you wanted to kick off about the essence of what we talked about, and that could be a good start.
Okay, let me just, I need to exit my screen, my full screen. Yeah, this was a very robust conversation. So I'm just gonna just rattle off a few things. Big success was being part of a culture change experience. Brenda talked about this, where the organization was committed to do it for everyone and senior leaders went through it each time. And connecting it, like Paul talked about, to something larger than the OW. There was a number of comments about it being hard to describe, affirming that it was hard to describe, and to get people immersed in the experience is really important. So we talked about maybe there was an experience for a number of years in Philadelphia where we were doing public workshops, and that might be something to revive. And I'm going to jump to something Susan said at the end, which was that she has been offering shorter experiences to people, again, whetting people's appetite, getting them engaged. So the consistent message is, how do you join with people? How do you join with the language of their systems? How do you give them a sense of the experience? But there was also there was also a question about, what do you do when an organization says that they're otherwise occupied with other initiatives and other consulting gigs? And there was a response of, to the extent possible, join with what else is going on in the organization, as my puppy is joining with me.
Every man and his dog's on the call.
And talk about, and I think you said this, Paul, how the OW turbocharges any initiative. So I have more notes, but I touched on the major themes. Would anybody add anything? In group 3?
I think just one thing to add.
I just want to say one more thing, Paul. Let me just add one more thing, which was wanting to make sure that CCL and the folks in CCL are connecting with our network, and I signed up to make sure that that happens, because I have some.
I think we've talked a lot about. We also talked a lot about giving people an experience, and sometimes you can't do that. So here's just a thought for you, that there's a lot of stuff about thought leaders these days. You know, everyone wants to be a thought leader, but if you think about what the experience does, it actually changes the way people think. And I think if you can't give people experience, even in taking a brief, if you can change the way people think, then that's when you really are a thought leader, because you're helping people change the way they think. So even from taking the brief onwards, if you can somehow get people thinking differently and therefore setting up the possibility of behaving differently, I think that's the key. The experience is simply the vehicle to help people to think, not just see the world differently, which is the thinking. Sure, they have to behave differently, but I think that's a really vital thing. Changing people's thinking will help you influence them. Yeah. So that's enough from me. Sorry, Michelle.
Don't be sorry at all. I think this is fantastic. So why don't we move on to Jeff and his group. Jeff, who did you have take notes? Oh, he's taken himself off on mute.
I don't want to necessarily speak for the group. There was a lot of good thoughts that came from Anna, from John, from Andrew, from Viva, from Pat. We really had a very robust discussion. I will just add one thing and then ask the rest of the group. There was a lot of conversation in our group about clients not wanting to dedicate the time beyond, say, a half a day. So we had a lot of dialogue about how do you get the customer, the client, to really see the value of investing more time in it than just a half a day, especially if we're introduced to the OW in a half-day format through CCL or some other organization that does it that way commonly. Oftentimes they do it as part of a larger program and then they weave it in through the rest of the program. But clients walk away saying, oh, I just want a half-day version. And so we had a lot of conversation about that, a lot of good ideas, including helping people understand what was going to lead to behavior change, what was going to lead to addressing the pain that they mentioned in the beginning of your engagement. Would they be able to answer the questions of now what and so what was something that I had mentioned. I would invite the rest of my group to comment on what else stood out for you in terms of our conversation, but that was one big topic that caught my attention. Anybody else, John or Nancy or?
If you didn't want to speak, just make sure you unmute yourselves.
I was just saying, if you did want to speak and share, please make sure you unmute yourselves. And I said that at first while I was muted. So I just unmuted myself to make sure that you were doing the same if you'd like to share.
So one other thing I'll add there, Jeff, it's Andrew here, was that just at the very end we were talking about is how do you create curiosity in advance? And these are John was asking if I got this right, John, but how do you generate that curiosity in advance, and then how do you sustain it so somebody doesn't feel as if they get it in the first half hour and think the other 7.5 is kind of just redundant.
I think the other thing I feel more strongly these days is, what's in terms of sales, what's our own internal conviction and story about why a 2-day OW is better than in some circumstances might be necessary and value adding. Are we really behind it? So, or have we sort of given up and feel like a half day is all we're going to get? Because if that's how we feel at the start of the conversation, it's probably going to impact. And as I've got clearer more recently about the value in my own story around a 2-day, then not surprisingly, I've sold more 2 days. And I'm not saying that 2 days, has to be the thing, but it's like what's needed in what circumstances. So, yeah.
It's a great point.
Build on that, something we spoke about is the point of giving a taste and who needs like more of a taste and who needs less, and are the people or the group of people that think, oh, I get it and I get it in a half a day, do they really get it? But it's about, Jeff was saying it, the point is not to get it right, but the point is to have an experience. And so being really careful in, you know, how much do we shorten the format and give them a taste, but is this actually, you know, what's the end game, and what is, like, how much do they want a systems change? Getting to that question gets around the questions of time and cost and other things. So again, even if a client seems very ready and saying, yes, I'm ready to get on, and they don't really get it, then there's a risk, and it's better. Jeff said something about, it's better to like stop and probe, so that, is this for real? Are they really committed to systems change? And do they really understand what it would take to get that, and are not just shortchanging the process?
Michelle, can I say something to that, to what Vera said?
Please do. Thank you.
Once again, you know, the quickest way we can get through logic is to get straight to the limbic system. And the quickest way, which has already been said, to the limbic system is by stories and anecdotes. What we say to a client when they say that is, we basically absolutely agree. Half a day, fantastic. But let me tell you what you'll get. You'll get fantastic musical appreciation. And it will be really a great appreciation of music. But you do a 1 day or a 2 day, you're going to get people playing instruments. It's really up to what you want to do with this stuff. So it's another metaphor that seems to resonate. Yeah. In terms of handling that objection. Yeah.
Genius.
That's fantastic.
One other sales technique that I found helpful, I don't know if it's a technique, but a process in terms of engaging the client, is to do something that Pat said in the chat window earlier, which is, if you can get enough interest in the first conversation, and if there are some things like Mitch said about strategic initiatives, and Kevin's the pain that's in the system, if you can then move to engagement and say, is it possible to, it would be worthwhile, in our experience, it is worthwhile to have a bit of conversation with the different parts of the system. And then to try and create the conversation, the conditions for some honest conversation. And I find if you can get 3 levels of the system, even a couple of people from each part, small group or one-to-ones, and if you can create the conditions where they're willing to speak up in the way we do the 2 and sell what's the possibilities of the system, where are the frustrations, where are the constraints, and you bring that data back, which is real stories, then it's much easier to create the length of engagement that's necessary. And you're not pushing them, you're just reflecting back their data, and you're telling it in a way that starts to introduce this systems lens rather than a personal lens. So I find, can I get in to the conversations, and if I get into the conversations with the real people, then the whole thing comes alive, and you're just connecting up the stories rather than pushing the workshop.
It's great.
Did we have anyone from Kevin's group share as well?
Sure, I'll mention a couple things.
Great.
What we said, that where we were most successful in selling the program is embedding it in a multiple day experience, so that we don't go in and try to sell an organization workshop or when cultures meet as a standalone experience, that we bundle it as part of a multiple day intervention. So that, and the purpose of the intervention is to solve problems that the client has identified, like we have a weak leadership, or we're moving, we're going through some cultural change, or, you know, whatever it is. There's one that I did for, you know, those companies that come and trim your trees so that
We lost Bill.
Bill, we've lost you. Does anyone from Bill's group want to pick up where he left off?
I think he was wanting us to guess what the name of those companies are that trim trees.
I think
Funny.
He's a very patient man waiting for the answer.
I know.
Tree Trimming Incorporated. Or leaf it to Bill.
That's fantastic.
Here come the puns.
Okay.
I will leave it as an open floor if anyone else would like to share.
I'm curious to know, is there, and maybe I'm jumping ahead too far, I apologize, but is there a library of some of our very best testimonials that people are willing to let other people borrow?
I don't know about a library. I can volunteer. We have several brochures over the years that Barry and Karen made, and we don't send out brochures very often, but I have some of them that I've taken photos of that have testimonials on them from clients that I would be happy to use. And we actually have on the agenda a project of gathering more testimonials, which I'd be willing to share with the network once we gather them ourselves.
Okay, good. Thanks, Jeff.
That would be great.
On
I
that,
think oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, go, Michelle.
I was just going
Up
to
to
say,
you.
I think we may have actually gotten Bill back. Am I right? Oh, no, we lost him again. Okay, I'm sorry, Mitch. Go right ahead.
I was just going to say, won't you come home, Bill Bailey? Won't you come? Many people express OW in many ways. One way, it's just one way, is on our website. If people want to have a look at that, we've talked about some of the things we've talked about, the pain and so forth. And that's got some testimonials on it that you know, just as I guess as long as you would also acknowledge us, it would be cool. Yeah.
So Michelle, if you wanted to finish what Bill was talking about, I mean, I think this is Ginger. There were some really good suggestions within our group. I don't know what tree company he was talking about.
I would actually love for you to share, but I don't know if Bill is back again. I can see
Bill's
him.
back.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you.
Gotcha.
The purpose of the tree trimming company was it was all around.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill. We lost you again. Oh, sorry.
He's on his iPhone. I think that might be the issue with his cell phone signal.
We're not getting you.
I would go back to Ginger.
Yeah.
Well, so just briefly, I mean, I think the group had some great ideas about what to do. That was a big takeaway for me, which was, you know, packaging OW as part of a multi-day program with perhaps a leadership or a culture focus for organizations. That was great. We talked about the challenges you face when some of the people in the workshop don't know each other, so you're not working an internal organizational opportunity, and how do you manage that? And we talked about the culture program for that. Let me see what else. One of the sales ideas that Mitch had, I thought was really good, you know, turbocharging this with other initiatives. We talked about that and how to sell with all three levels of the system, kind of recreating the challenges that they're going through. And then I think Kevin mentioned that there's a Power Lab film, which I personally did not know about. So I think the open question on that is that available to us as part of the resources, the trainer resources?
Yes, it is, Ginger. I actually put that in the chat if people didn't notice it. Anybody who sends me a email request at jeff@powerandsystems.com, I will send you a link, a free link to the documentary, which is Living in New Hope, which is about an actual Power Lab. It's an award-winning documentary, as Kevin said, so I'd be happy to share that.
Yeah.
And also, while I'm talking, I couldn't help after Paul mentioning one of his puns, I looked up the worst names for tree trimming companies, and I came up with the following. Tree Mendus is one. Another one is the Tree Musketeers. And then last but not least, the Tree Wise Men.
Oh, isn't that good? Isn't that clever? Whoa.
Tree's Company. Oh, I like that. All right, where do we go from there? Are there any other groups to hear from, or is it back to Kevin and to Mitch?
I'm going to go back to you, Kevin and Mitch.
Okay. I'll make a statement so Kevin can end. It's basically it's a request. It's to everybody on the call and all those, in that this is such beautiful work, doing such beautiful things in a pretty stuffed world in some parts. There's some wonderful, but we know this makes a massive difference. It really does. And we've got capability, which is lots and lots of trainers out there can do this work. My battery's gone there. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
We've got capability, which is good. But the big thing is usage. And unless we get out there and we sell it, irrespective whether we like to sell or don't like to sell, whether you like the word or not, we're never going to do this great work in the world. So it's just a call to action to say, you know, I love what John said. Get back to your internal convictions. You know this makes a difference. It's for God's sake, that's why we all went into this work in the first place. And wouldn't it be great if, as a result of this call, we make a commitment to go out there and make one more phone call, to follow up one more time, and to get one more OW and change one more person in the world. That's my stay. Yeah.
Nice.
We haven't heard from Kevin in a while. Is Kevin still around? Did we lose him?
Let me scroll down, see if he's in the list.
It looks like he's here. Kevin, if you are there, could you unmute your phone? I'm not sure if... No.
He's around. He's waving his arms.
He's here, but Kevin, you're muted right now.
Let's see if I can unmute. Oh, did I get you? Kevin, can you
hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you now.
Hello? Oh, there we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. Yeah. So thank you. We had great conversations in our group, as both Ginger and Bill reflected. And I wanted to add one thing, and that is, and I'm very willing to send this to Michelle and Jeff and have you forward it. And this is a middle integration activity, and I talked with my group a little bit about this. It's called speed integration, and it really helps work with middles with each other. And if you're familiar with Barry's book, In the Middle, pages 51 through 55, there's a nice explication of the 5 levels of middle integration. I use those 5 levels of middle integration and create an assessment where people rate themselves on their current level of integration with everybody else in the room. And then they do their ideal rating with everybody else in the room. So there's a current and an ideal level of middle integration for each person that this person sees in that participant workshop. And then, so there's often a delta between current and ideal, of course. And then they go around and they have individual conversations with everyone else in their room, and they discuss each of their ratings for one another. And they look at the delta between current and ideal, and they talk about possibilities that get created by that delta, and whether one or the other is willing to do something different so that they can align their integration levels with each other. And it becomes a real concrete, practical action that they can take that then gives you a key takeaway out of that workshop that helps reduce the tearing of middle and also helps create an empowered middle across the organization. So I've written that up. Happy to send it out to all of you. And again, just here, feel free to call on us. If you are finding yourself lost about sales and marketing approaches, about how to use materials in the workshop, about how to streamline the program in a way that makes sense, about how to unearth cultural issues, organizational cultural issues, as well as other kinds of cultural issues within the context of the workshops, both the organization workshop and when cultures meet. There's many great applications of these that as those of us that have been in power systems for many years and have exposure to the way people around the world do this stuff, we've been able to gather, and we're starting to find ways to get that out to you, but we're also very willing to help coach you in place where you are in the world. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you as well for joining us. Jeff, did you want to say anything before we?
Yeah, that would be
before we
great.
leave?
Uh, First of all, I'm really excited. I learned so much from this myself, and I am engaged in selling the OW in our workshops all the time. So it just goes to show you the power of getting, lots of people together with different experiences and how rich that can be. So in closing, I just want to really take a moment to really express deep gratitude to both Kevin and Mitch. What a great journey and a great discussion you've taken us on. I'm really glad to see these virtual trainer gatherings be so robust, considering we're not in the same place, so it can still be a very rich discussion. And we do plan on doing more of these. So I want to ask two favors of everybody that chimed in today. One is that please be on the lookout from a survey. We'll be sending out what we call a Survey Monkey email with a link to it, to a very brief survey that you can do in 5 minutes or less. And we'd love to get your feedback. And if you have ideas on other topics, whether it's going deeper into the body of work in terms of a theory base, or whether it's more practical application issues like selling or marketing or anything related to the this body of work, we'd love to get your suggestions. And or if you're willing to volunteer to be one of the facilitators, we would love to hear from you. So thanks again, Kevin and Mitch. And one more final pitch to start thinking about whether you could join us on June 25th through June 28th in the UK. The 25th and 26th would be a When Cultures Meet workshop and certification. And then the 27th and 28th would be the trainer gathering itself. And we're in the throes right now of planning a great session, and we'd be very excited to see you all there. So for all the participants today, thank you. And please come again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
All right.
And again, Mitch and Kevin, thank you so much for hosting
pleasure.
for us
Thank you.
today.
Oh.
Okay.
Thanks.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.
Namaste. Bye.
Bye.